Hello and welcome to RWR Plays TEW 2020. This is chapter 37 of WCW Lives On, the series where we're playing as Eric Bischoff as if WCW continued to exist beyond the time it did in real life and WWE didn't take it over. And we have reached a pretty big milestone today because it is Uncensored, the pay-per-view that is now in November. Of course, we've moved it in the calendar from March where it was traditional home was. In fact, I think we resurrected it because WCW got rid of it in 2001. So we brought it back and it's now in November. The reason for that is because we got a different pay-per-view we want to run in March, and also that the November pay-per-view that was previously on the calendar, Mayhem, we've moved to May just because we think it sounds better in May. And so today, first of all, before we get to the recap of last week's show, a little nudge in the direction of the subscribe button. If you've been enjoying this series, it obviously will pay you to continue to follow with us as we continue this series onwards to Starrcade. And also, of course, give us a like if you enjoyed this video when you get to the point where you stop watching. Now, in terms of the last week's episode, we had in the main event of the Go Home episode of Monday Nitro before Uncensored, Bill Goldberg secured overall victory in Group B by defeating Ric Flair and won himself a place in the final of the Starrcade Series opposite Scott Steiner. And that, of course, will headline the pay-per-view we're about to bring to you. To that end, Scott Steiner came out at the end of Nitro and told Goldberg to be ready for the big match. Also on the show, Booker T and DDP defeated Kanyon and Bam Bam Bigelow just 6 days out from their match against each other for the WCW World Title, though there were signs that the pair were still not on the same page. Also, we saw Eric Bischoff inform Sting that he would face Mike Awesome for the US title in their third match in a month at Uncensored. And finally, he booked a match between Jeff Jarrett and Conan, where if any member of either the Filthy Animals or the Jarrett administration interfere, they will be suspended. So that was everything that took place on Nitro, the Go Home episode of Nitro before this pay-per-view today, Uncensored. Let's, without further ado, get to it. Okay, so here we go. It's WCW Uncensored 2001, and it is in front of 22,457 people in the BB&T Center in Florida. We decided to go back to our previous home base of the Southeast for this particular show. We begin with the Cruiserweight Tag Team title match, which sees the FBI defending against Air Raid. And as you can see, the bout had a decent reaction, but subpar wrestling. And Air Raid win the match in 12 minutes and 5 seconds when AJ Styles submits Frankie Cicero. Air Raid win the WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team titles, and Cicero was the weak link, struggling to keep up with everybody else's in-ring performance. So this got a segment rating of 54, and perhaps as pleasing as that, perhaps even more, is that AJ Styles had an in-ring performance of 60. So it appears now that Styles is really starting to pick up. James Maritato also performed well with a 55, and Air Paris wasn't bad either with a 48 here. So that's something to bear in mind for us as we go forward with this tag team and their championship now in the Cruiserweight Tag Team division. So AJ Styles and Air Paris, Air Raid, have become the Cruiserweight Tag Team champions. A good start to this show. Then we have Jeff Jarrett versus Conan and their big grudge match. And as you can see here, about that had great heat and good wrestling. Jeff Jarrett defeated Conan in 13 minutes 50 by pinfall following interference from the debuting Brian Armstrong, or Road Dogg as he's often known in WWE. We couldn't use that because that's obviously WWE trademark. And I try and keep it as, you know, close to reality as I can in terms of the namings. That's why a lot of times I change the names if I feel like we couldn't get away with using it. Segment rating here of 67. Jeff Jarrett's in-ring performance was 81. Conan had an in-ring performance of 59. Brian Armstrong's degenerate gimmick, which he's obviously carrying over from the WWE, has got an initial rating of very good, so that's also very pleasing. And Jeff Jarrett gets a victory here with the help of the debuting Brian Armstrong. After the match, Brian Armstrong helps Jeff Jarrett to the win, to the back, as they celebrate his win in the previous match. Segment rating of 67. Just a quick little thing here, just to sort of put the full stop on Brian Armstrong's debut. Next, we have the tag team title matches, Totally Buff versus the European Union, in a bout that had good wrestling and good heat and decent wrestling. Totally Buff defeat the European Union in 10 minutes and 19 seconds when Buff Bagwell pinned Alex Wright, illegally using the ropes for leverage. Totally Buff make defense number 6 of the WCW World Tag Team titles, and Bagwell was the top performer despite sustaining a wrist contusion in the middle of this match. He had an in-ring performance of 68, Luger only a 58, Norman Smiley a 54, Alex Wright a 45. Luger also seemed off his game, which was another drag on the match. Segment rating then got 54. Not a great match by any means, and certainly I'd say one of Totally Buff's less high-profile tag team title defenses to this point. I think that was always known going in here. I wasn't really clear on how Totally Buff fitted into this card in general when I first started planning it, and so I kind of wanted just a placeholder really for the tag team titles here, and so probably nobody expecting the European Union to get the victory and win the tag team titles in this one. But my concern here is Bagwell sustaining a wrist contusion, and that could mean that he's out of action in the future, which might mess up some plans, but we'll see what happens there and how much that affects him. Hopefully it will be a case of him not being affected at all, as often happens with these injuries. And there you just have confirmation of Bagwell's injury from the road agent Terry Taylor. Oh, and also a little backstage heat on Norman Smiley, as it was felt that it was his mistake that caused Bagwell to get hurt. So hopefully that won't make problems backstage. Next up, the Cruiserweight Cruiserweight title match, not the Cruiserweight Tag Team title match. And in a match that had great wrestling and a decent reaction from the crowd, Rey Mysterio Jr. defeats Great Sasuke in 16 minutes and 55 by pinfall. Rey Mysterio Jr. wins the WCW Cruiserweight title. So another title changing hands here as Rey Mysterio Jr. beats the Great Sasuke. Segment rating of 76, so a really, really pleasing match. This one, a great effort from both. Sasuke with a 67, but Rey Mysterio Jr. a 79. Rey Mysterio Jr. is a real star, and I think he's getting hotter with the crowd and more popular with the crowd as time goes on. And this was really what I've been building to with the Cruiserweight division, is get the belt on Rey Mysterio Jr. Because what I'm looking at is whether or not we can elevate the Cruiserweight title to a point where it's not just a mid-card title, and maybe not even just an upper mid-card title. I've got this kind of vision, which I'm hoping will come to fruition, although I think it will be very difficult, of making the Cruiserweight title like basically a main event title, maybe not at quite the level of the heavyweight title, but I feel like if you can almost separate the cruiserweights and the heavyweights enough that they don't have to interact, and therefore when heavyweights fight cruiserweights, they define the cruiserweights down, you can potentially make the cruiserweights a bigger deal. But that's not necessarily something that's definitely going to happen or concrete in my mind. It's just something I've got planned that it might come about. But whatever the case, this is the kind of match that proves to me that it can be done, and Rey Mysterio Jr. beats Great Sasuke to win the Cruiserweight title here. After the match, Conan and Billy Kidman come to the ring, and Conan brings with him the bag that was passed to Rey Mysterio by Tony Schiavone after Kevin Nash gave Schiavone the bag, and he reaches out and pulls out Rey's mask. He then puts it on Rey's head and raises his arm to signify that Rey has earned wearing the mask again. Conan and Billy Kidman stand side by side with Rey Mysterio with his hands in the air. So yeah, 62 segment rating here, a decent little segment, and Rey Mysterio Jr. now will be able to wear the mask going forward, which is the whole point of the Kevin Nash thing at the last pay-per-view. Next, it's Mike Awesome versus Sting, US title on the line, and in a bout that had fantastic heat and great wrestling, Mike Awesome defeats Sting in 17 minutes 31 seconds by pinfall. Following interference from Lance Storm, Mike Awesome makes defense number 6 of the WCW US Heavyweight title. A segment rating here of 81, that's superb. Mike Awesome 77, Sting a 78. And the way this one went down, so Sting had Awesome in the Scorpion Deathlock, but Lance Storm came to the ring and distracted the referee. Sting released the Scorpion Deathlock to go over and get rid of Lance Storm, but Storm drops down to the floor. Mike Awesome then knocks Sting down from behind, and Sting falls to the floor as well. Then, as the referee tells Awesome to back up, Sting gets up, but Lance Storm lands a thrust kick to Sting and rolls him back in the ring, allowing Awesome to powerbomb Sting and then hit his top rope splash to retain the title. So Mike Awesome retains the US title in a really, really strong match here. Great stuff from both Mike Awesome and Sting. Loving this. So next, it is the 6-man tag match, which sees the franchise players, Shane Douglas, Brian Adams, and Brian Clark against Ric Flair and the Wyndham Brothers. And in a decent match, Ric Flair and the Wyndham Brothers defeat the franchise players when Wyndham pins Brian Clark. In terms of in-ring work, Ric Flair is head and shoulders above everyone else. Barry Windham is the weak link. So Windham clearly struggling in terms of his age now, I think, slowing up as he gets towards retirement age. But yeah, you can see here Douglas at 69, Ric Flair at 85, so he's in a really good place still in terms of performances. And in general, not too bad. A segment rating of 67, not a bad match at all, given that this was a bit of a kind of just cobble together some people and put them in a match type deal. Then we have the WCW World Heavyweight Title match between Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page, and Booker T gets the victory in a match that had fantastic heat and good wrestling. In 21 minutes and 47 seconds by pinfall, Booker T makes defense number 1 of the WCW World Heavyweight Title. That's, of course, since he retook it from Jeff Jarrett at Halloween Havoc. This one got a segment rating of 72. Neither Booker T or DDP went above 70 in terms of their in-ring performance, which is a little bit of a disappointment. But I guess this match also suffered from the fact that both these men are baby faces, and so that maybe didn't give it as much heat as it would have, or as much sort of crowd investment as it might have done otherwise. And then after the match, we see DDP effectively get up and approach Booker T, and then he shakes Booker's hand and leaves Booker to celebrate in the ring alone. So a really good segment rating here of 81 as DDP kind of puts their differences aside following the last month of kind of antagonism between the two and shakes Booker T's hand. And really this was just to reaffirm that DDP's not turning heel. It was just a mechanism to kind of give them some heat heading into this match, and they are now kind of on the same page again. So it's time for the main event. It's the final of the Starrcade Series, and it got a segment rating of 81, which is really, really decent, an exceptional match. And Scott Steiner defeats Bill Goldberg in 15 minutes and 20 seconds by stoppage when Bill Goldberg cannot continue. So how the match plays out here is Goldberg goes for a spear but knocks the referee down when Scott Steiner manages to get out of the way. As Goldberg checks on the ref, Scott Steiner goes to the outside and grabs a chair, then brings it into the ring. Before he can use the chair, however, Goldberg notices and hits Steiner with a kick to the head. Goldberg then grabs the chair and throws it out of the ring. The match continues, and eventually Goldberg is awaiting Steiner to get to his feet to hit another spear. But while this is going on, Rick Steiner emerges from under the ring, grabs the previously discarded chair and manages to jam it between his brother and the turnbuckle, and at the same time push his brother out of the way so that Goldberg goes crashing into the chair in the corner. Steiner then applies the Steiner recliner, and the ref, who has finally come around, checks on Goldberg to see he's out cold and ends the match, awarding the victory to Steiner. So Scott Steiner wins the Starrcade Series. Segment rating of 81. Goldberg and Steiner had an 89. The match suffered because of a lack of selling on display, but I'm pretty happy with this. A segment rating of 81, you can't argue with that as a main event match, and the quality and the fact that will obviously raise our popularity. And that is the end of the show. Scott Steiner with his arms raised as he celebrates winning the Starrcade Series and booking a place in the main event of Starrcade next month against Booker T. And so that is the end of the pay-per-view. An overall rating of 77. Some really good matches here. Obviously, the US title match was fantastic. So was Steiner versus Goldberg. They will both go into, I think, somewhere close to the top 10, if not the top 10. We also got, in terms of top 10 matches we've had so far, we also had the great Cruiserweight title match, which is definitely the best Cruiserweight title match we've had so far. And a really decent World Heavyweight title match between Booker T and DDP. Pretty happy with that in general. Increased our popularity in 3 regions. Yep, got to be pleased with that. In terms of who we're going to give praise to, Rey Mysterio is definitely one of them. I also think that Scott Steiner probably and Bill Goldberg deserve the other bits of praise. Although, to be honest, I suppose we should really give some credit to Awesome and Sting. I'm going to leave it like that because I'm pretty sure I've given Sting and Mike Awesome. Actually, I haven't. I've only given Mike Awesome some credit once. I'm gonna give him. I'm going to give Mike Awesome some praise for his performance, keeping Steiner happy. So that is Uncensored. I think that was a decent pay-per-view. Happy with that in terms of the level of quality, in terms of obviously how it's increased our popularity. And we obviously now head into December where Starrcade will be taking place. Before I do that, I do want to look at our top 100 matches, which we haven't had the chance to look at for a little while. So where we've got here, so where did that as an event sit? So 5th best event we've done so far, rating of 77. Only Bash at the Beach and Slamboree in terms of pay-per-views have been better, so that's good. It's been the best pay-per-view for a little while, actually. In terms of matches, so Scott Steiner is the man, basically, as far as top matches go. Steiner's matches with Sting, Flair and Hennig are the 3 best matches that we've put on so far. Shane Douglas versus Ric Flair is then in the mix, and we've got, you can see Sting and Ric Flair also really performing very hard. Their match with Steiner brothers, and then their tag team match against Chronic as well. Both those matches doing really good ratings. But the main event of that pay-per-view was the 7th best match we've seen so far, Steiner and Goldberg, and then Michelson versus Sting was a 9th best match we've seen so far. In terms of the Mysterio Jr. title win goes, that was 24th best match so far. Victory over Great Sasuke, so another really good performance there. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else from Uncensored that is now has made the list following that pay-per-view. I imagine there might be 1 or 2. Yeah, here you go. Booker T versus DDP is the 40th best match of the year. And also, anything else? Just checking quickly. There might not be anything else. We have got, yes, Jeff Jarrett versus Conan there, 71st. And anything else before we finish this bit? Not sure. Can't see anything. Nevertheless, 64 now you need. A rating of 64 to get in the top 100. I think that will be about 65, maybe even, no, 65 I reckon by the end of the year, when we've got 4 more episodes of Nitro obviously and Starrcade still to come. In terms of our titles, so WCW Cruiserweight Champion now is Rey Mysterio Jr., his 6th run with the belt. Current prestige is only 43 though. It's only just kind of moved up a little bit. It's floating in terms of its level, so it should increase in prestige, hopefully, with some more decent defenses. The Cruiserweight tag team titles are only got a prestige of 31. Has that gone up or down? In general, that's gone up, but it's only going up very slowly. The Starrcade Series, obviously the first ever Starrcade Series, so that was at 70 prior to our match between Steiner and Goldberg, and so Steiner's the first winner of the Starrcade Series and the prestige is 78, so that might help the match even more next year when we get to it. The US title has a prestige of 67, and again this has been slowly moving up with some good performances from Mike Awesome. You can see now that Awesome, well, I mean, he beat DDP to win the title in the tournament final earlier in the year. Then he's since defended against Kevin Nash, Kurt Hennig, Tommy Dreamer, a defense against DDP which he lost by DQ, and then 2 against Sting. But that was the best US title match so far we've seen, was the one against Sting at Uncensored. The World Heavyweight title has a current prestige of 81, and again that's actually dropped over the course of the year, so Booker T's not done the best job during that run. Obviously though, Jeff Jarrett did hold the belt briefly as well, which did maybe bring it down, and that was the 3rd best world title match we've seen so far. So Booker T a little bit better in terms of this month's defense. And finally, the World Tag Team title, Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger have been champions now for a little while. This was probably it was their weakest tag team defense so far. They've been against Sean O'Hare and Chuck Palumbo, the Insiders, Goldberg and Jim Duggan obviously, and then the European Union. So still work to do in terms of the tag team division, but Bagwell and Luger retain the belts. We'll find out also where he is in terms of, God, I'm really bad still at finding where things are in this menu. Buff Bagwell's wrist contusion, only 2 days, and he's going to work through it, so that's all good. You can see here Jindrak is also injured at the moment, but he's working through it. And Naohiro Hoshikawa we brought in to do some work with, I can't remember the name of the guy he was going to team with, and then he got injured before we could do anything, so we may use that in terms of him being on an alliance loan from All Japan. Anyway, that is Uncensored, and we continue on with this game, this save. Just having a look here at the news. So we've got XPW are on the brink. Cash-strapped XPW appear to have lurched into more problems, as it being widely reported that they have only a matter of months left to turn their financial performance around, or they will face closure. Some of the company's worried stars are already reportedly looking into work elsewhere. Just want to have a look at see who they've actually got in XPW. Well, by the look of this, not very much. No, I was thinking about having a look at who was there and potentially bringing somebody in, but they've got nobody there. Minus 129,000, so they are not in a good place. Maybe WWE will buy them like they did with IWA Puerto Rico recently. Just looking down here if there's any other big news. Doesn't look like it. No major news there. So that is our WCW Uncensored 2001 episode. Thank you very much for watching. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. It always helps towards the success of the channel and in terms of my own motivation to continue to do this series. I have picked up a little bit in terms of momentum on this save recently, and I've been enjoying it again much more. I've been able to get back into it. It's very difficult when you haven't got the time, you can't put your head properly into it. More recently I have been able to, and I've planned out quite in some depth now the next 4 weeks and Starrcade itself, and also started to look at what I'm going to do after Starrcade in a bit more detail. So it's very possible this save does go beyond Starrcade, but a lot of it will depend on how many views we're getting and how much people are enjoying it. So please make sure you let us know if you're enjoying it, and any comments as well, any feedback, that's also always welcome. One last plug before I go as well for our podcast, the Random Wrestling Review, which runs every single week. We've got like 140 odd episodes now with reviews of so many different shows, plus on top of those 140 episodes about 50 or so, maybe a bit more actually, bonus episodes of various different types and kinds, which you can find out on our feed everywhere you get your podcasts. The Random Wrestling Review. We are the podcast which basically is ripped off the NWO logo, which we use for this channel as well, so you'll know about that already. Anyway, as I said before, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.